pipe bands and Remembrance Day. Why is that such a big thing? Well, I'm glad you asked, and I think you're going to find this pretty interesting. For many hundreds of years, bagpipes and drums, apart from entertainment, accompanied some of the most intense aspects of the human experience. From motivating the fearful in war, celebrating victories, or lamenting the lost, it was once formally banned by the English government to limit its use by the Scots as a weapon of war, stirring the soldiers into a heightened frenzy, throwing themselves into battle. During World War I, pipers were present on the front lines, particularly among the British and Commonwealth forces. Of the 2,500 pipers involved in the Great War, some 1,000 were said to have been killed and a further 600 wounded. The losses were so great in the early stages of the war that the tradition of them leading Scottish regiments into battle was reputedly banned by the War Office. But the practice continued regardless, and the skirl of the pipes echoed across battlefields throughout the conflict. Pipers played a dual role on the battlefield. First and foremost, they were soldiers, often serving as stretcher bearers, medics, or in other combat-related roles. However, they also played a symbolic and morale-boosting role. Bagpipes were played before battles to inspire and motivate troops, and they were played during quieter moments to maintain a connection to tradition and provide a sense of comfort. The sound of pipes on the battlefield was both haunting and stirring, and it became associated with courage and determination. It's worth noting that while the use of bagpipes was more common among British and Commonwealth forces, other nations' armies also had their own musical traditions that played a similar role in boosting morale. 26% of the Scots who marched away to battle did not come home. For the rest of the UK and Ireland, it was 12%. Only the Serbs and Turks had a higher proportion of participant deaths than Scotland. The intensity and tragedy of war became part of the pipers' music, immortalized in tunes like The Green Hills of Tyrol and Battle of the Somme. The British government decided that no bodies would come home and that all would have identical gravestones. However, almost half the dead were unidentified or missing, and many of these never found. An army chaplain, the Reverend David Relton, had the idea of the tomb of the unknown warrior, and this was consecrated at Westminster, London on 11th of November 1920. Though it's considered an ancient instrument, there were pipers in many wars in the last few hundred years in North America, Africa, Asia, World War I and II, the Gulf War, Desert Storm, and even in Afghanistan, playing the lament to fallen soldiers, their bodies being returned to Canada. The pipes were used as an incentive to battle, motivation for the troops, intimidation of the enemy, celebrating victories, and mourning the fallen. The drums were also used as a motivation and for communication of signal orders, tactical maneuvers, and firing of weapons. Thousands of pipers died while playing the men into battle, as they could not carry a weapon and their pipes at the same time. That was a great act of bravery. One example of such bravery was James Richardson, or Jimmy as he was known, born in Scotland, moving to Chilliwack, BC with his family at a young age. He'd won 3 gold medals in piping competitions in BC and was also noted for his bravery as a young boy when he tried to save another drowning boy. Enlisting in the army in 1914, Jimmy was assigned to the Canadian 16th Infantry Battalion Expeditionary Force. He served in Belgium and France as a soldier, piper, and a cook. On one occasion, Jimmy advanced beyond Canadian lines into the thick, dark forest, stumbled upon a farmhouse and realized that he was surrounded by German soldiers. Although he tried to hide, a German officer signaled the others in his direction, and bravely, Jimmy quickly shot at the officer and ran as fast as he could back to his own camp. He informed the others, and the artillery quickly took care of them. The Battle of the Somme in 1916 was one of the bloodiest battles in World War I. Jimmy was at the Regina Trench. On October 9th, he was granted permission to go in with a planned assault. In the early morning, the Canadians, including Jimmy, left the safety of the trenches and advanced upon the Germans. They came upon heavy barbed wire stretching 400 yards. It hadn't been cut by artillery as they had planned. Heavy gunfire came from the German lines, and the Canadians scattered for cover. The outlook was grim. Jimmy asked the sergeant major if he should play his pipes. According to the official citation, Piper Richardson piped up and down outside the wire, playing his pipes with outstanding coolness. Inspired, the Canadian soldiers rushed the wire with fury, overcame the obstacle, captured the position. Later, Jimmy was sent to take a wounded soldier and some prisoners back to camp. After about 200 yards, Jimmy realized that he'd left his pipes behind and insisted on recovering them. He never returned. Jimmy was buried at Adinac Military Cemetery in France. He was 20 years old. Jimmy received the Victoria Cross, the highest honor in Canada. He's the only Canadian piper to receive this award. In 2000, a project at a private school in Scotland sent out an email to identify the tartan on a set of old mud and blood-covered pipes with a bullet hole that had been kept at the school for over 75 years. The pipes had been found after the Battle of the Somme and were kept as a souvenir. It was discovered that the tartan belonged to the Canadian 16th Expeditionary Force. These were the pipes that Piper Richardson had gone back for and never returned. The pipes were returned to British Columbia in 2006 and are on permanent display in the British Columbia Legislature. Our bands now, both civilian and military, respect the history and culture of the pipes and drums. Our participation at school assemblies, Legion halls, and cenotaphs, especially at Remembrance Day, is to remember and honor those who gave the greatest sacrifice. In Sydney, as the names of the fallen are read, the 443 Squadron Cyclone Helicopter massacre reminds us of how close we are to our past, to the present world conflicts, and how precious and fragile our safety and freedom is. We are here to keep tradition and strength from the past and to prepare us for the future, lest we forget.